early on in the campaign, when it was just Hillary and Bernie Sanders, Noam Chomsky was asked who would he vote for, and it was a very lukewarm response.
First of all, Bernie Sanders may use the word socialist, but he's basically a New Dealer.
So right from the beginning, he's sitting there saying that even though he calls himself a socialist, he's not a socialist. He's just a New Deal Democrat. So already, he's calling Bernie Sanders a liar. Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist. No, he's not. He's not a socialist.
Now, in the current American political spectrum,
yes,
to be a New Dealer is to be way out on the left.
Yes.
Eisenhower, for example, who said anyone who questions the New Deal doesn't belong in the political system would be regarded as a raving leftist. So Bernie Sanders is a decent, honest New Dealer. I agree with him in a lot of things, not in other things.
Do I prefer Bernie over Hillary? Well, there's some things I like about him, some things I don't like about him.
I agree with him in a lot of things, not in other things.
And then he has absolutely no confidence in the system. He essentially says the system will not allow Bernie Sanders to win.
I frankly think that our system of mainly bought elections, he doesn't have much of a chance.
So who gives a shit, right? The system's corrupt. The system would never let Bernie Sanders win.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
So he calls Bernie Sanders a liar. You're not a socialist. You're just a New Deal Democrat. And then he says that the system just would not allow a Bernie Sanders to ever win. So why even consider it? It's silly. It's child's play to even entertain the notion that Bernie Sanders might win the Democratic ticket and then go on to win the general election. And then the interviewer persists and they say, well, let's assume Bernie loses. Who would you vote for in the general election?
In a sentence or two, what would you say is the difference between Hillary Clinton and, say, Ted Cruz? That makes it worth voting for her against Cruz?
There are enormous differences.
Just sum up for me what you think it is.
Carpet bombing Syria, for example, is a difference. Ted Cruz says, it's an easy problem, we'll just carpet bomb them. What's the effect of carpet bombing?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Take, say, the nuclear deal with Iran. Every Republican says they're going to kill it.
Yeah.
That's, I assume if they do, that would isolate the United States. It would presumably continue between Europe and Iran.
We haven't even finished the primary election, but Noam Chomsky is going to go ahead and, as if it was a foregone conclusion. Yep, Bernie Sanders is going to lose the Democratic primary. Foregone conclusion. You must get in line. You hearing me, American people? It doesn't matter if the Democratic Party fucks Bernie Sanders over or not. Get in line. The system is too corrupt to vote for Bernie Sanders, but we need to jump into this corrupt system, and we must vote for Hillary.
They who refuse to vote for Trump or refuse to vote to stop Trump, what's your message to them now that he's won and he's in the White House?
Same as before. I think they're making a bad mistake.
The difference between Noam Chomsky on Hillary versus Bernie, he's saying that we must vote for Hillary. But he didn't say we must vote for Bernie. He's saying that it is essential that we go out and vote for Hillary. He didn't say that it was essential to go out and vote for Bernie.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies. First of all, there are two issues. One is a kind of a moral issue. Do you vote against the greater evil if you don't happen to like the other candidate? The answer to that is yes. But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies. First of all, there are two issues. One is a kind of a moral issue. Do you vote against the greater evil if you don't happen to like the other candidate? The answer to that is yes. But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
That's an interesting argument, Noam. So it is a moral imperative to vote against the greater evil. So therefore, it was a moral imperative to vote against Hillary and vote for Bernie. It's a moral imperative to vote against the greater evil.
First of all, there are two issues. One is a kind of a moral issue. Do you vote against the greater evil if you don't happen to like the other candidate? The answer to that is yes.
You didn't say that, though. You didn't say that Bernie versus Hillary, that you must vote for Bernie because Hillary is the greater evil, so you must vote against the greater evil.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
When it comes to Trump v. Hillary, Noam Chomsky says you must get out there, you must do your duty. The nominal differences between these two candidates says that one is definitely better than the other and that it is a moral imperative that you get out and you vote for Hillary Clinton.
If you have any moral understanding, you want to keep the greater evil out.
And he said no such thing about Bernie Sanders. He didn't say it was a moral imperative. He didn't say you must get out there and vote for Bernie over Hillary. He didn't say that they had differences, of which they had many differences. He gives a very lukewarm support, a lukewarm response of support. Yeah, sure, Bernie ideologically aligns with me, so yeah, personally, I prefer Bernie.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
So that was a very tepid response. Had Noam Chomsky had got on the liberals, the progressives, to get out and go vote for Bernie, then perhaps we would have had Bernie Sanders as president. If Noam Chomsky would have told us to vote for Bernie in the Democratic primary the same way that he told us to vote for Hillary in the general election, we would have Bernie Sanders as our president today.
We know, because we've seen what you've had to say on the subject, how you regard Bush and Blair's record in the Middle East. Do you think Obama's no better?
At other points in time, Noam Chomsky has explained that Barack Obama was actually worse than George Bush and Tony Blair. He's saying that he's escalating the Afghanistan war on Israel-Palestine.
In many ways, it's worse.
Why?
I've been writing about it. I started writing about it before the election.
Why is he worse?
Well, should we go through the details?
Please.
In the case of Afghanistan, he's sharply escalated the war. This is threatening a breakup of Pakistan, which could be a catastrophe for the West. A potential breakup of Pakistan, which has both a huge number of nuclear weapons and a radical Islamic development, both of them supported by the West. Israel-Palestine. I mean, his position is shocking. He's refused to do. I mean, there was just a UN Security Council resolution a few weeks ago in which calling on an ending of settlement expansion, and declaring the settlements illegal, which is not even controversial. Obama vetoed it.
And then at another point, he said that Hillary Clinton was actually more militant than Obama, which is obvious. She's the one that pushed him into Libya, the Honduras thing. She's clearly a war hawk. So that's indisputable.
Do you think, are you optimistic of a Hillary Clinton presidency, or do you think you see any difference in a Hillary Clinton presidency?
Maybe a little more militant.
More militant,
I would imagine.
So isn't it insane? He's going to sit there and say that Obama is worse than Tony Blair and George Bush, and then he's going to say that Hillary is worse than Obama. This war hawk, who's to the right of Obama, who's to the right of Blair and Bush, is better than Donald Trump. And then Noam Chomsky says that he cannot think of one issue.
Second is a factual question. How do Trump and Clinton compare? And I think they're very different. I didn't like Clinton at all, but her positions are much better than Trump's on every issue I can think of.
Not a single issue that Trump is better on than Hillary. He can't think of a single one. Not one.
Her positions are much better than Trump's on every issue I can think of.
Because today, Mr. President, we are asked whether to give the President of the United States authority to use force in Iraq will aid our search for a wise, effective policy. Therefore, on no account should dissent be discouraged.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
Saddam Hussein is a tyrant who has tortured and killed his own people, even his own family members, to maintain his iron grip on power.
All right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president.
The inspectors found and destroyed far more weapons of mass destruction capability than were destroyed in the Gulf War, including thousands of chemical weapons, large volumes of chemical and biological stocks, a number of missiles and warheads, a major lab equipped to produce anthrax and other bioweapons, as well as substantial nuclear facilities. Nuclear facilities. Nuclear facilities.
Took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say.
When Saddam blocked the inspection process, the inspectors left.
Operation Desert Fox happened at the same time that the U.S. House of Representatives was conducting the impeachment hearing of Bill Clinton.
As a result, President Clinton, with the British and others, ordered an intensive 4-day air assault, Operation Desert Fox.
Bill Clinton would become the second U.S. president to be impeached by the House
on known and suspected weapons of mass destruction sites and other military targets.
On December 19th, 1998, which happened to be the very last day of the bombing campaign of Desert Fox. When asked why he stopped bombing, he said because the objectives had been achieved.
And he ultimately said it was a mistake.
Though there is apparently no evidence of his involvement in the terrible events of September the 11th, 2001.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it.
This isn't the first time that Bill Clinton had been criticized for these Monica missiles. He did that with Operation Infinite Reach. He was called to testify before a grand jury about the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and then 3 days afterwards, on August 20th, 1998, he dropped bombs in Sudan and Afghanistan.
It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare.
Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
And will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons. And will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons. And will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
The open questions are, what should we do about it? How, when, and with whom? Now, some people favor attacking Saddam Hussein now.
So you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
Okay, all right.
With any allies we can muster, in the belief that one more round of weapons inspections would not produce the required disarmament, and that deposing Saddam would be a positive good for the Iraqi people.
And he's had the gall to go
The
after
World
my
Trade
mother.
Center came
He's
down
had the
during
gall
your
to go
brother's
after
reign.
my
Remember
mother.
that.
Hold on.
Let me finish.
And would create the possibility of a secular democratic state in the Middle East, one which could perhaps move the entire region toward democratic reform.
Here's my theory. Here's why, if Donald Trump becomes president, by the way, you'll have all the Democrats united with the independents against him, Plus, you'll have a lot of Republicans also coming over because let's remember, Donald Trump is bad for down-ticket Republicans. That's why they're afraid he might lose them the Senate.
If we were to attack Iraq now, alone or with few allies, it would set a precedent that could come back to haunt us.
So he dropped bombs in Sudan and Afghanistan because of the Lewinsky affair, because of having to testify before the grand jury, and he bombed Iraq during the impeachment proceedings itself, Operation Desert Fox.
Reasons of narrow-minded interests, it cannot act. In Kosovo, the Russians did not approve NATO military action because of political, ethnic, and religious ties to the Serbs.
Okay? So if Donald Trump becomes president, we might even have a Democratic Senate. But think about this. We have all the independents, all the Democrats, and a lot of Republicans get peeled off to work against his agenda.
Might never approve force against Saddam Hussein until he has actually used chemical, biological, or, God forbid, nuclear weapons. God forbid, nuclear weapons. God forbid, nuclear weapons.
Remember this, we have a super popular president right now. Barack Obama is super popular. He just nominated a Republican to the Supreme Court. They won't even give him a frickin' hearing. So let's remember, so they can thwart the president. The president can be thwarted by Congress. So people say what about Donald Trump if Donald Trump becomes president, in 2 years, the Senate and the House flip for sure to Democrats. Sure.
That's the House.
Okay, let me just finish. For sure, they flip. People are afraid of it going to be flipping this year.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
I will take the president at his word that he will try hard to pass a UN resolution and will seek to avoid war if at all possible.
So, Bob, it seems to me that Donald Trump being the top of the ticket, he seems to be destroying the Republican Party. They seem to be fracturing. My theory was that it would actually be that there's a chance, I don't know if this is for sure, but I had a theory that it would be a chance that if Donald Trump became president, it would actually be a positive for the progressives because, A, he puts an ugly face on the horrible policies of neoliberalism and they're easy to oppose. Whereas if Barack Obama, who's right now pushing the TPP, he puts a nice face on the TPP, he splits the natural opposition to it, meaning the Democratic Party. And so we're actually worse off with a guy like Barack Obama, whereas if with a clown like Donald Trump, you could stand up against him and he fractures his own party. What do you think about that theory?
I think you're a very brave man.
Because bipartisan support for this resolution makes success in the United Nations more likely and therefore war less likely, and because a good faith effort by the United States, even if it fails, will bring more allies and legitimacy to our cause, I have concluded, after careful and serious consideration.
Okay, you don't know, because she's going to try and work with the Republicans because the Republicans aren't going to let a lefty get onto the Supreme Court to shift. They're not going to do it. Guess what? The Democrats could do the same thing right back to Donald Trump. They can filibuster anything if he nominates a maniac. And so what we'll probably end up with is the same kind of Supreme Court justice, no matter if Hillary Rodham Clinton is president or Donald Trump. The only difference is the House and Senate are going to flip in the midterms. It's just which way you want it to flip.
That a vote for the resolution best serves the security of our nation. If we were to defeat this resolution or pass it with only a few Democrats, I am concerned that those who want to pretend this problem will go away with delay will oppose any UN resolution calling for unrestricted inspections. This is a very difficult vote.
So it actually helps the progressive agenda. And let me tell you, what is Donald Trump going to do that isn't already happening? This is my last point, and then we'll go. What is Donald Trump going to do that isn't already happening? Right now, if you believe Fusion already says that Barack Obama is doing on a deportation level with Hispanics what Donald Trump is only promising to do. We already did a video about that. We already talked about that on the show. that fusion is out. They said that Barack Obama has deported more people, more Hispanics, since all the presidents combined since the 1890s. That's what fusion said. If you believe what fusion says, all right? So that's already happening under Barack Obama.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
This is probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Any vote that might lead to war should be hard, but I cast it with conviction.
We're already getting right-leaning justices being nominated to the Supreme Court. He's already pushing TPP. What worse can Donald Trump do? He might not even do TPP. He says he wouldn't.
I know that I am. So it is with conviction that I support this resolution as being in the best interests of our nation.
He said he's against these trade deals. So what? I don't understand. What is the bad thing that Donald Trump is going to do that isn't already happening? And by the way, what is Hillary Clinton going to do that's better than what he's going to do? She likes all the bad policies that the Republicans like. She's for TPP. Now she's against it. Believe me, she's going to flip on that.
A vote for it is not a vote to rush to war. It is a vote that puts awesome responsibility in the hands of our president.
She's to the right of Donald Trump on Israel. I mean, so that's my case. So don't freak out about a Donald Trump presidency. I think, in fact, my theory is that it's even better for progressives in the short term, meaning in the 2-year term, and in 4 years for sure. But if we go the other way, we will have a Republican majority for 8 years.
So essentially, my criticism of Noam Chomsky is this. During the primary, do you want Hillary Clinton or do you want Bernie Sanders? And he's like, well, personally, my personal feelings, ideologically, it's Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't think the system's going to let him win. And then when it comes to the general election, you're going to have to basically bite the cheese sandwich and vote for the anointed one. The establishment, the establishment we've already anointed.
And we say to him, use these powers wisely and as a last resort. And it is a vote that says clearly to Saddam Hussein, this is your last chance. Disarm or be disarmed. Thank you, Mr. President.
So, unfortunately, Noam Chomsky showed his ass during this last election, this 2016 election. He showed his ass. He is so establishment, he is so conservative that before the primary was even over, he was already telling people that they must get in line.
This was a refreshing thing. The thing that scares people about Trump is quite legitimate, and it really is basically that finger on the nuclear button.
They must get in line and do their duty and vote for a warmonger. But he didn't tell us that we must get in line and vote for Bernie Sanders, vote for the good man, vote for the good, honest man. So for the primary, I lean towards Bernie Sanders. And then for the general election, it is immoral if you don't vote for her. How immoral? You're a bad human being. You vote for the lesser of the evil during the general election, not for the primary, just the general election, because of some unknown reason. Who is a New Deal Democrat, and who is precisely what America needed.
But if he were elected, I think he would, of the current candidates, I think he'd be the one who would have, from my point of view, the best policies.
And you know, Hillary Clinton made a lot of it. You have 4 minutes to decide.
He used chemical weapons on Iraqi Kurds and on Iranians, killing over 20,000 people.
Well, why does any president have 4 minutes to decide whether we're going to destroy life on this planet? That's what the mutual assured destruction, that's hair trigger alert. We're still on that. Why?
It bothers me also, and Paul Ryan's going to vote for this increase in the debt.
In recent days, Russia has talked of an invasion of Georgia to attack Chechen rebels.
He doesn't really do anything when he tries to run a business. He runs it bankrupt. So my point is, if this guy makes Bush look like a genius.
India has mentioned the possibility of a preemptive strike on Pakistan,
which is an unlimited increase in the debt. They're also busting the budget caps.
And what if China were to perceive a threat from Taiwan?
Right? And so, as far as in government, I mean, getting stuff done. So he won't be, I'm telling you, the coalition against him will be so strong.
Unfortunately, during the 1980s, while he engaged in such horrific activity, he enjoyed the support of the American government because he had oil and was seen as a counterweight to the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran.
History may well prove you right.
Thank you.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
And by the way, if we elect Hillary, we have to keep waiting for progressive values to get manifest in our government. It's not going to happen. It's just like when Barack Obama was president. We didn't get anything really progressive done.
But I will be putting up, tremendous amounts of money.
Got the right wing's health care plan done, and when Occupy Wall Street happened, he didn't do anything about it. He split the natural opposition.
Super PACs are a disaster. They're a scam. They cause dishonesty. And you better get rid of them.
So Noam Chomsky's endorsement of Bernie Sanders was tepid and lukewarm.
And it'll be a nightmare. And they will be so radical. That's what we have to fear, is the House and Senate flipping in 2 years, and then in 4 years a Republican president, and then it's solid, and then we're screwed.
Because they are causing a lot of bad decisions to be made by some very good people.
History may well prove you right.
Thank you.
For both military and domestic welfare. And this is the unholy alliance I've been talking about.
The United States, therefore, could not obtain a Security Council resolution in favor of the action necessary to stop the dislocation and ethnic cleansing of more than 1 million of Kosovar Albanians.
This guy makes Bush look like a genius.
Super PACs, because they're causing a big problem with this country.
Let this trope. But that's true about Hitler, too. They never had another Hitler once they voted for that one Hitler. So I'm just saying, like...
And I'm not blaming these folks, but I guess I could.
I'm not going to be the person who votes for the complete destruction of democracy in order to get a better democracy. I can't do it.
And the reason is because Noam Chomsky isn't hurting. He's middle class. He thinks that, okay, we can be patient. We can get changed later on. Let's play a little game. But it's not a game for the people that's underneath the bombs, for the kids getting their ass kicked out here by whoever, neighbors, bullies, their parents, for the poor people, for the homeless people. It's a death sentence. Poverty is a death sentence. And for every night that the homeless stays outside, it's just another night of trauma, of being cold, and of society being callous. So of a unnatural relationship where we don't give a shit, where we don't take care of our own.
Hi, Sean.
I don't think it's the destruction of democracy. I think democracy rises up.
I've got to be honest, we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Right? So then I go, well, what if he appoints a Supreme Court? We can still filibuster all that stuff. In 4 years...
Right out of the gate, I felt John Harwood was extraordinarily unfair to you.
And perhaps my decision is influenced by my 8 years of experience on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue.
If Hillary Rodham Clinton becomes president, here's my prediction. In 2 years, the House and Senate go even farther, way, way right.
Innocent people get brutalized by the police. They get thrown in jail. Those people, they need justice right now. They need help right now. They need to have not bombs, not violence dropping on them, but they need, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, essentially, right? Just food, water, clothing, shelter, just like anybody else. And then friendship and love, but the basics. We can provide the basics at the very least, right? America, we're not that fucking cold-blooded. We're just going to let our own American countrymen, probably a war veteran, starve to death on the fucking street.
And attacking you and the line about the clown and unnamed sources that tell him that you would fly before that ever passed. I've got to imagine that that's pretty aggravating for you. What's your reaction to it?
This guy makes Bush look like a genius.
Well, I don't know. I think we did very well tonight. The debate itself went very well, and the audience started booing him.
And they go, well, what about Supreme Court? She's going to nominate another Republican-leading leaning Supreme Court nominee, because right now the Republicans control the Senate.
Hi, Sean.
History may well prove you right.
Thank you.
So for some bourgeoisie people, they are showing their ass. They were very scared. They were so fucking conservative. They were rushing out in front of themselves, tripping over themselves, telling us that we must vote for this she-devil who's, you know, she's a psychopath. She has no ability to empathize whatsoever. Just look at her eyes. She is fake as fuck. And she's right-wing. So no wonder she's fake as fuck. No wonder she talks in that professor speak, because she's lying. That's how a person sounds when they fucking lie. Who talks like that? Nobody does. A liar. That's who talks like that.
And, you know, I guess I expected I'm number one in the polls, and I would maybe expect it, but I thought it was unnecessary, and it was very interesting. I think the result was very interesting, but the evening was a great success.
Just like Barack Obama, he nominated a Republican leading guy.
In the White House, watching my husband deal with serious challenges to our nation.
A corporate-friendly Supreme Court justice. Right now, he just did that. So you think Hillary Clinton's going to be any different than that? She's not. It might even be more to the right.
Hi, Sean.
Washington, where the right gets what they want, increased military spending, the left gets what they want, increased domestic spending, and there's sort of a secret handshake.
This guy makes Bush look like a genius.
And the audience started booing him.
We then elect a real progressive. Now we got a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and now we got a progressive president. And that's how progressives win.
All right. So how do you feel about where you stand in the campaign right now? Poll numbers, I'm sure, are not where you want them to be.
I want this president, or any future president,
And the audience started booing him.
to be in the strongest possible position to lead our country.
And all of the spending goes up, but they're bankrupting the country, both the right and the left.
In the United Nations or in war.